love to introduce my friend Ming Chow. He's a lecturer at Tufts University, Department of Computer Science. Tons of experience, years and years, I could go on. But most recently at DEF CON, OWASP, Massachusetts Attorney General, Design Automation Conference, Source Boston speaker. So excited to have your talk. Thanks.
Macy.
Thanks.
Half of what you heard is not true. Thank you very much for coming. Where is everyone? And I also can imagine that half of you guys are already bored out of your mind already, because I know a lot of you folks are already on the mobile phones and the device. So let me ask you this. If you're on the phone right now, who has downloaded a game, who is playing a game? Who has downloaded or played have a game on one of these devices? Anyone? Like, who doesn't have a game on the phone? Wow! Wow! I am shocked by the number of you who actually have a phone and don't have a game. It seems like 50-50 split here. So I'm going to give you a little backstory on So back in 2008, Gary McGraw and I worked on, security of massively multiplayer online games. And back in January, I got an email out of the blue from BBN, Paul Rubel. He's a researcher over there, and he asked, "Yeah, I see that you teach at Tufts, and I was wondering if you can give a talk. I see you do game development, I also see you do security." And then I sat back and I said, "You know what? I could do a talk on both, and perhaps I've been doing a lot of work on mobile recently, and perhaps is there a way, an opportunity that I can mix the two together?" It's been 6 years that I've talked about games, so it's actually a great time to actually go back to it. So the whole gist of my talk today is we're going to look at the underbelly. Yes, we're going to look at the underbelly of this whole realm of things known as mobile games, and the scope of what I will we'll be talking today is going to range from cheating, to let's say to perhaps things that are a little more sinister. I have to say that by all and large, I'm extremely disturbed and disappointed by the amount of work that has been done in this area of mobile games. In fact, in terms of white papers and literature, I've only found one paper that even addresses this issue of mobile games and security. It is that appalling. And knowing how big mobile games are, and I just want to give you some of the really not so surprising numbers. So, look, it's not only big business and big money, but it encompasses a good majority, a significant amount of the downloads that are on iTunes App Store, Google Play, and even more so on Amazon. Okay, these are not these numbers should not be surprising to you. I mean, there's always been chatter about the significance of games and how it has spurred mobile, and these numbers could not make it even more clear. Okay, so these are also things that we also know about mobile devices. Look, these devices are high value, they can be easily lost and broken, they offer a lot of features that PCs don't have, including GPS, accelerometer, the compass. There's also constraints as well too, which are screen size and input. And I also have to mention a little bit about the security model. I mean, the security model of mobile devices like your iPhone, your Android, they're not the same as the PC. So the days of having antivirus, it doesn't really, it just can't apply anymore because of course apps are all sandbox. So mobile offers new features, new constraints. They also offer more opportunities for good and bad as well. So that's what we know about mobile. I don't have to talk too much. But here's, I think, is a really, really, really important slide. Again, I mentioned, I did some work in massively multiplayer online games and security back 6 years ago. If you're familiar with anyone play World of Warcraft, EverQuest, Final Fantasy, any of that stuff, okay? So we looked into security of those games back 6 years ago. So 6 years have passed, so what has changed? And there's been so much that has changed, especially over the last 2 to 3 years. And each and every one of these items play a very significant role to understand the underbellies of mobile games. First and foremost, what has really changed is the development cycle and the cost. So years ago, it would take millions and millions of dollars, Hollywood budget, armada of developers to build a game. So what is it now? I mean, what does it take to build a game now? All right. So years ago, it would take an armada of developers, millions of dollars. What is it now? How many developers do you really need to actually create a game? One. Okay. What's the cost? Very minimal. The cost of entry is extremely low. Of course, if you're an Apple land, you have to pay $100 a year to be in the iTunes App Store. But to make a long story short, every mother and their kid can now actually create a game. Because not only does the SDK nominally is zero in terms of $0, but there are also many game engines and frameworks out there. Cocoa OS, Unity, and Unreal Engine that are available for free where you can build a game for a mobile platform. Okay, and some of these frameworks and game engines are drag and drop. And so, I mean, you hear about the stories about kids, making games on the iTunes App Store and actually make it onto the top 10 list very easily. Well, it's not a surprise that it can be done because, of course, development cost and the cycle is very, very accessible now. Goals are for players, significant change. Can someone actually tell me, what has changed for players? I mean, what's the goal for players in a lot of these games within the last few years? Anyone want to take a stab? Yeah. Okay. That you nailed right on the head. Leveling up, and what else? So you go from level 1 to level, 99. So leveling up, what else?
Account sales.
Oh boy, account sales. Virtual item, virtual goods. The other thing that I have on my mind, I know which you were saying, to your point, along the lines, also is the whole idea of achievements. Lots of games now, the emphasis is on leveling up, building virtual goods, or trying to actually win a badge or an honor, okay? An achievement of some sort, such as, create an airport in every city in the world, or that you have killed 10 or more enemies in one shot. You get a nice little badge on Game Center or on the Google Play achievements, okay? Those are just generally goals so you can, not amount to much, but badges of honor. What about the business model of game? How have they been? Back in the good old days, I remember spending $49.99 or $59.99 to buy a game. What is it now? Free 99 cents. Cost to get the game on your device is very low. But where does the developer really make the money? Wait a minute. Whoa. So if a publisher is pushing out a game that is $0 or 99 cents, how do they make money? Yeah. You got ads. That's number one. What else? This thing known as IAP, or in-app purchases. If you want to buy fake gold, or the fake golden sword, or more time, okay, or cards, or whatever virtual item, that's the real moneymaker. You'll be shocked to hear, I was actually shocked to hear companies like Electronic Arts saying that we actually now make more money for FIFA and our sport game that we offer for free on the mobile devices than our console games. That's telling you something right now. All right? Add-on purchases, advertisement, you name it. That's a lot of money now to be made. But the game client, nominal if not free. All right? Distribution of game client and content. How is that done? You download it from where? iTunes App Store, Google Play, or where else? If you're in Android land, it's wonderful. The third-party market somewhere. How many app stores are there for? Android? Too many to name. In fact, things got really bad when Flappy Birds got taken off the store. Then where did you download the game? Who knows? Or Amazon, AWS somewhere. Distribution of game client is very interesting. It could be anywhere now. Okay? Dependency on network connection and third-party system. I don't know of one mobile game. Actually, for all the mobile games, and I do play a lot, most of these actually, if not all, depend on network connection on some sort, and of course, connection to third-party system of some sort. What do you think I mean by connection to a third-party system? How many people have ever played those games and actually say, do you want to post your high score to Twitter or Facebook? Okay? That stuff. Yes. Okay? Or, post your score to Game Center or to OpenFaint or to any other system or to any other social network, known to man. Or even LinkedIn as well. Alright? So now we have games that actually absolutely need for some ungodly reason, network connection and connection to third-party system. All this stuff here has changed within the last few years, which have actually led to things perhaps not for the better. Okay? So a typical architecture of mobile game. You would just think it's just the app. You would just think it's the client that is on the phone. For example, on my device, I have a game which I will talk about a few times. It's called Pocket Trains. Okay? You just think it's just the app, huh? Well, it's not just the app Pocket Trains. Anyone here play Clash of Clans? No one play Clash of Clans here. Okay? Anyone play Hearthstone? Beautiful game. Okay? Absolutely one of the best, arguably one of the best games I've played in years. But behind the scenes is a lot more than just a client. There's also servers as well. What servers are for? Well, let's see now. For, let's say, keeping track of your game logic, where you are, keeping track of your points, login, authentication. In fact, if you play Hearthstone, the authentication system is Battle.net, which is also used for games like World of Warcraft and Diablo. All right, so it's also used for Hearthstone. Let's say caching as well, because in terms of a mobile device, you need to run fast. There's also cache servers involved. APIs that also include Facebook, Twitter, OpenFaint, Game Center for Apple. Okay, the operating system also plays a part of the mobile games as well, such as memory isolation, sandboxing, and even things like, ensuring that the readings of your accelerometer are correct. Okay, and of course the mobile carriers, you name it, also plays a very important role for mobile games for delivering things like quality of service. All right, so it's much more than you think. It's just the client itself. Behind the scenes, it's really, really large. All right, I mean, games like, of course, Hearthstone, Clash of Clans that you might have seen advertised on TV. Okay, they embody typical architectures of mobile games. It's not just the client anymore. So this here. Now we'll talk about the why. Why of the underbelly of mobile games. Okay, the why for their reasoning behind the underbelly. Ethics or lack thereof. Abuse. Okay, lots of these games, okay, in terms of leveling up. You mentioned leveling up. All right, how long does it actually take for you to get from level 1 to level, let's say, 60 something? A long time. But something in psychology better known as instant gratification. Okay, we all want to be the guy, or the girl who actually want to be better than everyone else. We want to demonstrate that we can achieve, level 66, 67, 68. We want not only a high level because there's a status symbol that goes on if you actually have a really, really high level or that you have all the powers in the world. But you want to get there fast. You want instant gratification. You don't want to grind. You don't want to wait for the next full meter. Okay? Now, a lot of these games actually depend on time. Okay? You make a move, you actually make your transaction, but then you have to wait for 2 hours for something to happen. I am looking at you, Candy Crush Saga. Who here know exactly what I'm talking about with Candy Crush Saga? So what's the idea with Candy Crush Saga? Okay, you are given, I think, 5 lives or 5 opportunities to actually finish a level. If you waste all your opportunities, you have to wait for 5 hours or so in order to get all the 5 lives back. Okay? Or the great thing is you have to pay the money, and then of course you can actually get your 5 lives right away. That is why King decided to go IPO. Because the people lacked their needs of instant gratification, and they were willing to fork up $90 a week to pay the games. Okay? You don't want to spend money on virtual goods. Yes, games like, Pocket, any of the Nimblebit games, which I actually love, Hearthstone, if the point is, if you want to get ahead, or if you want to really level up, you really need that golden sword. You really need that new deck of cards. So you have to spend money on the virtual good and actually go up that way. You don't want to lose. Okay? If you're, for example, a sports fan like to play FIFA, you want to win the game. Okay? You want to win the game, so if you're about to lose, then that's not a good thing. You want to do something about it. You want the achievement, you want to win, and of course this last one, if you have no business in playing games, but guess what? You know that people like to play games. You know that mobile devices are high value. You just want to steal whatever data is on the phone. Okay? So these are the reason behind all the underbellies, all lack thereof ethical acts behind mobile games. So now let's talk about the how of the underbelly. How do you actually go through and do all the abuse? Okay? How do you actually get to if you're the bad guy or if you're the unethical player, how do you get your way? Well, it's actually easier than you think. Okay? And we're going to go through each and every to give you an example behind file modification. Okay, there's file modification. Some of these things have been around for years. Okay, but then however, mobile makes it easier to perform. Then let's take a look at file modification and tampering. Okay, did anyone go to Joey's talk yesterday on mobile forensics? Anyone? It was a great talk because what was good was a lot of the stuff that he presented yesterday alludes to what I'm talking today. Most games store data in the clear, gameplay data. Either in SQLite databases or if you're in iOS land, like something called plist. Okay? So for example, Pocket Trains. Pocket Trains, the whole premise of the game is you deliver goods to cities around the world, real cities around the world, and it takes a certain number of time to actually get your train from your starting point to, let's say, your other city. And once your goods are delivered from city A to city B, you get gold. What can you do with that gold after when all the goods are delivered by the train? You can buy new ports. You can buy new ports in cities to open up. Okay, so on Pocket Trains, there is a plist file that actually has all your game data. The number of gold that you have, the trains, the stations that you own, even the crates, all that good stuff in an XML format. Okay, all you have to do is, open up the app, through a tool like iExplore, open up the plist file, modify it, and then of course, all your changes, open up the game, you can see all your changes. However, one of the interesting things is that Nimblebit actually checks some of the data on the server side at times. And so what they have done is, if there's actually discrepancies between your plist and the plist file and what's stored on, what information that's sent on their server, you actually can get banned. Okay? So how you actually can get ahead in a lot of these mobile games now? Well, just open up the data in plain text, modify it, and voila. Malware, okay? In Android land, if you're not familiar with, one of the things that you can do in Android, which is lovely, is you can download an app, you know, because an app is just an APK file, which is analogous to a jar file or a zip file, extract the data, puts the stuff that you want in there, repackage it, and submit it to the Google Play Store. That's why there's so many different versions of a Starbucks app back in the good old days, or many versions of Bank of America, and of course, as of recent, how many different versions of of Flappy Birds are there? Too many to name. Okay. So example number one, there is an app on Android called Freedom that revealed all the application, including games, that are quote-unquote hackable, and that have in-app purchases. So if you're the person who don't want to actually pay for in-app purchases in games and apps, download Freedom, okay? And of course, it will actually have a menu of things that you want to do, like say, instead of paying 99 cents for gold, the amount of dollars that you spend is 0. All transaction happens somewhere through a middleman, not through Google Play. How it works? Let's not get into that, okay? Flappy Bird was actually one of my favorites. Now, if you don't know the backstory already, there was a developer who was so fed up with his own fame, being the top game on the App Store on iOS and Android, so fed up with his fame, don't want to do anything with this anymore, pulled the game out. And of course, people were, all up in arms. So what the bad guys decided to do, bring it back to life. Of course, the version of the game that they brought back to life, it smelled like the original Flappy Bird. It looked like the original Flappy Bird, but at the end of the day, it wasn't the original Flappy Bird. Because, of course, the permissions were a little bit different, and some of the code base were a little bit different, and so some of the ads and some of the transactions were going through some of the sinister servers. Okay? Now, don't be shy. Who have played Candy Crush Saga here? Raise your hand if you played Candy Crush Saga. Have anyone here of those of you who have played Candy Crush Saga, have you actually looked for ways to cheat so you can actually get more lives instead of waiting for a few hours? Don't be shy, admit if you actually have done that. You have. Now, have you ever done a Google search for Candy Crush Saga cheats before? It is the biggest abyss that you might actually have ever seen. If you actually have done a Google search for Candy Crush Saga cheat, you will not believe the amount of spam that you will see. And that, in fact, every single entry in Google looks exactly the same, okay? In fact, if you actually go to some of the web pages from the link, they all look the same as well. Gee, I wonder how that happened, okay? In fact, even worse is that with games like Flappy Bird, what we found out was the ads that were being displayed. Now, a lot of these games, of course, who said that a lot of the business model of games depend on ads? Someone here said that, okay? Now, the problem is with a lot of these ads, where they're from, well, I can tell you this much. They're not from like Coca-Cola or, the Fortune 500 companies. They are ads to, let's say, things that will give you okay? And, huh?
The misfortune file.
Or the other way around. And you can tell, even if you actually look at the ad, it doesn't, I don't think this looks very, this doesn't look very reputable to me. And unfortunately, it is very well known that the ad network is kind of, let's say, well, the word is seedy. I think that's a perfect word to describe it. Red light district, okay? Which can potentially lead to other malicious websites and networks as well. Okay? Now, I don't know, I had a conversation yesterday with, I forget who it was, and we talked about, how many people have been to Hack Kids, or what used to be DEF CON Kids? They rebranded it to now Hack Kids. Anyone? Okay. So, it was 2011. No, it was DEF CON 19. So, I remember we had DEF CON Kids, because I was involved with it. And put it this way, there was a 10-year girl by the name of Sipi, that was her handle, revealed a 0-day in game. You know what that means? Be afraid. Be very afraid. So what turned out, she revealed something really, really interesting. A lot of these games, such as Candy Crush Saga, Pocket Trains, Pocket Plane, you name it, the game where you actually, if you have to wait for a certain amount of time in order to make your next move, well, they depend on something called your actual time on your mobile device. This is what you call what I coined a time state attacks. You know, they are dependent on the actual time. Now there's a little typo here, I just caught that. So yeah, the whole idea is if you want to move ahead, if you want to get your move back, just incrementally change the internal clock on your device. It's not that hard. Okay? By the way, this actually does work in Candy Crush Saga and Pocket Trains as well. Of course, the interesting thing is, if you actually, let's say, turn the clock forward and get all the trains, all the goods delivered to your city, in point B, it's nice, but the problem is your fuel will be of a negative value, which doesn't look good. Okay? Now, disconnection and latency. Now, one of the beautiful things about playing FIFA 14 is when I'm about to lose, okay, all I need to do is just disconnect myself from the wireless network, and there you go. The loss doesn't count against me. Wonderful. So now my overall record against online opponents, I'm undefeated. It is wonderful. Okay? It is the absolute most wonderful thing. However, for me, it actually works out pretty well, but also at times, if you are actually, let's say, winning the game big, okay, this could also work against you as well. So let's say you already have a great game going, but guess what happened? Then, of course, the whole game disconnects, the score doesn't count. The game actually doesn't count. Now, the problem with mobile device, with any of these mobile devices, is really the whole idea of high latency and high disconnection, okay? Detecting these are very hard. The problem with mobile devices is you can never ever depend on networking reliable compared to like Wi-Fi on a desktop or a laptop. Because the problem is what happens if you move from here, and of course when you go to the Charles River, it actually things get, or like in the middle of the desert, then things get really interesting. So disconnection and latency is a huge, is actually much harder to detect, but it actually is a double-edged sword. But still, it is a very, very good form of cheating in these games. Okay? Now the fake location, fake sensor data, this was still, anyone use Foursquare? It's still a big area of, let's say, work. And originally it could be worse, because let's say you're here right now in the Microsoft building. Back in 2010, everything was great. I mean, you can spoof everything. I mean, they had their API that was wide open, and of course you can tell some people that while you're in Cambridge, you are actually at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Okay? Fake sensor data, all this stuff, really easy to do, especially if you have a rooted or jailbroken device. Okay? Now, there was some research that has been done in this whole idea of mobile games. Well, guess what? Most of these systems currently lack like some sort of a TPM, Trusted Platform Module. So it's very hard to actually validate any of the sources, if any of the data was spoofed. Okay? API abuse. Oh, so Game Center. How many people have an iPhone ever looked at Game Center before? Now, one of the beautiful things, and still is a problem, even though Apple said they fixed the problem, is you see things like this. If you play Cut the Rope, this is some this has been, and it still is a problem for so many of these games, is when you actually go to Game Center, which actually records your high scores and all your achievements, and then of course when you compare to the rest of the world, how you compare to the rest of the world, you have no shot because you get some clowns that actually did this. Now, I think in Apple land, I can't even read what number that is, okay? But I think that was the quote-unquote max int that Apple implemented for scores for any game for the longest time. So this is still a problem because there's still plenty of games out there that I see on Game Center that had just completely asinine scores. Okay, so in translation, what's the point in leveling up? Because I'm never going to beat these guys anyway. Well, it turns out it's actually much easier to do, but it was really easy back in the days. All right, just shove a proxy in there. Okay, so attack number one, if you want to do exactly like rig high scores, connect to the API, intercept and modify the score-value field in the XML. It was just that easy. Okay? And of course this abyss right here, known as privacy and information leakage. You guys hear, I think it was a few months ago, that there were stories about how the NSA loves so many of these games, such as like Angry Bird, Candy Crush Saga. Okay? And why, the NSA love to have all the data? Well, it's actually pretty, it just becomes too easy. Why? I mean, why does all these games leak out so much information? Well, let's see. There's still too many apps that actually transmit data in the clear using HTTP. Example is QuizUp. Anyone play QuizUp? They fixed the problem recently. And of course, permissions. Android is one, and iOS as well now. A lot of these apps just use way too many permissions, or the user just grant too many permissions to the apps. Angry Birds is just another one. There's no good reason why Angry Birds should be reading your SMS messages. And unfortunately, that's been the case with a lot of the game developers. They get way too many permissions, and of course, you have too many permissions, you get too much. You have the opportunity to leak data is really, really high. Even better, 2 years ago, there were so many games and apps, for that matter, that called this API function called AB address book copy array of all people and sent all the data back to the servers. And I know that my friends at Bearcode built an application called Adios that just scans all the apps that were out there that actually made that had this API call. You just do strings on all the binaries of the apps, and they came up with many, many apps, including Angry Bird. Okay, if you were here at Joey's talk yesterday on mobile forensics, those games and apps. He said, if I remember correctly, like, games are the worst, especially those that post your high score to Facebook or Twitter. Most of these games store Facebook credentials, Twitter credentials in the plain text and SQLite databases. Okay, it just becomes way too easy. So how do you fix the problem? So let's see what's out there. There's more mechanism for the PC end of things because, of course, the security model is a little different. Of course, there's a thing called banning. There's penalties, captures that should make sure that you're a human. PCs actually, because data is not sandbox. They have things like anti-cheat, Warden for World of Warcraft. Read all the memory on your machine. That can't happen on mobile. That's currently, unless it's a rooted device, can't happen. And if you actually have location-based games, there is Dead Reckoning to predict the location of the players. All right. There's some proposed solutions, such as, about the disconnection problem in terms of latency. Well, is there a way to verify Wi-Fi position by sending, the SSID information, signal strength? I mean, look, we already have that. I mean, the thing is, SSIDs, signal strength, all that stuff, it's been recorded already by Google. What about if you're doing anything that's location-based? You can do really Q&A. I mean, there's APIs like Google Places, for example. If you're saying that you're really at the Eiffel Tower, well, you can actually, let's say, take a picture of that you're really at the Eiffel Tower. Submit that, and of course now with like reverse image search, that can be done really easily. AT&T has actually an API where it actually can display network statistics and information, about devices. And there's even, facial recognition by way of camera to actually prove that you're actually who you are when you actually make a transaction, like buying that fake sword or that batch of gold or that pack of cards. And of course, one thing I would like to add here, that I also haven't seen anyone take advantage of. A lot of these new devices, a lot of these new phones actually have biometric scanners, like Touch ID now, that can be used for transaction security. I mean, there's some good news. I mean, despite the fact it's not necessarily all bad, but, compared to the desktop and the PC environment, there's a lot of game attacks that, can't be done or really, really hard to do. For example, third-party plugins like Flash and QuickTime. I know that games like Second Life back in the good old days were vulnerable because, dependent on QuickTime. So you had a vulnerability in QuickTime, then the game was vulnerable as well. User-generated content is very, very hard. I know that, a lot of games that have been ported, like classic games like Doom and Wolfenstein, modding was a big thing. But because of sandbox environment and mobile devices, it's really hard to actually upload user-generated content. So thank God, like those good old days of new patches, I mean, that have gone away a little bit. Scripting engine, botting, you know, really, really difficult without like rooting or something. It still can be done. I think people have done stuff like aimbots for like shooter games on mobile device, but it required rooting devices. But all in all, in general, some stuff from PC cheating, game cheating, have gone away. So I guess what's the whole point of this topic? I mean, what's the value? Well, the value is who loses? Well, everyone loses. The players, you know, the loss of fun, you know, the loss of purchase of virtual goods, that's never a good thing, and potentially loss of personal data. And if you're on a mobile network, then chances are you could see, you know, spiking your usage and perhaps even, you know, even credit card bills as well too. Like for example, the malicious version of Flappy Bird, which actually can read and send SMS. Anyone here still paid by the cents for text messages? There's still some people out there. Okay, game developers have a lot to lose because they have a lot of money to make. So if you're actually spending $0 on what should be 99 cents for a pack of cards, well, guess what? They lose revenue because that's where they actually make, you know, that's where they actually make their bread and butter. Okay, you got bad data, and of course the cost of computation could possibly increase as well too. It will also affect platforms. You know, especially when the address book copy array of all people was out, it was a real black guy for Apple, and so they had to do. It was one of those few incidents where Apple decided, look, we got to do something right away because we're just getting negative publicity for this. So, I guess what am I trying to? I guess let's take a look back. So, the grand scheme of things, you know, it really is an underbelly for mobile games. It's not fun out there. In fact, there's many opportunities on what could possibly go wrong. I think what I'm really disturbed is, you know, again, as I said earlier, you know, we have this many people downloading games, playing games on a mobile device, but yet I've only seen one literature out there on this whole topic. It's just really troublesome to see. I mean, this is actually a fabulous arena. Mobile games can determine what could possibly go wrong, because of course the numbers show, hey, look, like, you know, 40 to 60% of all downloads for apps are, you know, all games. You know, so why isn't people doing more work in this area? I don't know. It's really disturbing to actually see, and the effect is right now, you know, no one wins. Players lose. Everyone's reputation is at stake. One thing that is that's for sure with mobile games and MMORPGs from a few years ago, there's also a lot of money at stake here as well. So why are people not going deeper into games? This is not a joke. Okay, people think this is all fun and games, but it's a great microcosm for everything that's, you know, for everything if you're doing mobile security. It's the place to be. Why isn't people doing more work in it? I don't know. I really don't know. And that's all I have. Thank you for being here, and I'm going to take questions. Questions, anyone? Yeah.
Maybe I missed it, but what was that one paper called, and what was like the general?
Yeah, the white paper was called "Toward Providing Security for Mobile Games," and this was actually published in the ACM in 2013. This is the only paper I've actually seen pertaining to mobile games. And I'm going to post these slides. I know that I certainly will put the link on my on Twitter. Can you believe that there's only one paper? There's actually only one white paper, academic paper done in this area. Yeah.
It wasn't on mobile games, but I think it was Gary McGraw and Greg Copeland who wrote a whole book on gaming security.
Yeah.
And that was for, like, you know, PC games and stuff like that. Hey, 5 years ago, 8 years ago.
And so I actually have a copy of that, well, because I work with Gary, and some of the things in that book still apply. For example, I can tell you exactly what still applies of these topics. One thing I did not mention in terms of abuse mechanism is packet sniffing, but that's well known. I mean, I don't need to get into that one because that's been well known for years. File modification, tampering. However, they didn't speak too much about in that book. I mean, I guess what has changed. Certainly, malware has been awful now. The API abuse have gotten even worse because of all these games now have to depend on Twitter, Facebook, or whatever social network is out there. They did mention time state attack. That's still a problem. That's still a problem in mobile. Location data, it wasn't big at all back 6 years ago. And latency has always been a problem. But it was, that book, there were a few things that carried over. But now, mobile, things just, I guess things have changed. A lot of things have changed since the writing of that book. And I did tell Gary, I'll be continuing to work on, I don't know what we're going to do with it. Anything else? No? Okay. See you again later. I'll post these slides.